I'm scared. Maybe too much oil. Is there too much oil? Hi guys, welcome back to my kitchen. Today we're going to be making twice cooked pork. It's one of our family's favorite dishes. It's the first time I'm making it in our kitchen today. Twice cooked pork is called twice cooked pork, obviously because you're cooking it 2 times. So the first thing we're going to do is get our pork ready to be cooked for the first time. We're going to boil our pork so it's cooked all the way through, and then the second time we cook it, we're going to stir fry it with a bunch of the other veggies and aromatics and some really nice sauces to give it the rich flavor that we're looking for. So let's get started by boiling our pork. We'll quickly go through our ingredients here, and then we'll throw them in the pot. For our twice cooked pork today, we're actually using some pork belly. This is a smaller piece of pork belly. You can get a larger piece. It just depends on how much you're actually looking to cook. With the pork, when we're boiling it, we're also going to be using some fresh garlic and some ginger as well. The hardest ingredient to find can often be the Chinese leek. So Chinese leeks are a little bit thinner than a traditional leek that you see in the grocery store. They're kind of looking like a scallion or a green onion, but they do have a flatter green part. If you can't find these, you can use traditional leeks. You just want to make sure you cut them a little bit smaller because they're obviously much thicker than the leeks that we're using here. Or you could even use green onion, scallion. It'll give it a really similar flavor profile, but if you can find the Chinese leek, go for that one. Right now we're going to get everything ready for our twice cooked pork. I've actually got a pot back here about 3/4 of the way filled with water. And once we have everything chopped and peeled, we're gonna put it all in that pot and bring everything to a boil. I have my Chinese leek right here. I'm just using 2 to start, and I gave them a quick rinse. Then I'm gonna chop off the ends just because we don't need those in our broth. Then we've got a little bit of garlic. We'll give that a bit of a smash. It doesn't have to be a full-on chop because we just want it opened up so we can get those flavors in there. And then a few slices of ginger as well. Method of cooking our pork, we're going to boil it. So we've got our pot of water right here. We're going to throw in the pork belly, our chopped up ginger, our smashed garlic, and then our Chinese leeks as well. You can tie them up like this. It kind of keeps it nice and neat in the pot. But if you don't want to spend the time doing that, just give them a rough chop until they're about 2 to 3 inch pieces and put those in the pot as well. And then we're ready to go. The last thing we're gonna add is a little bit of light soy sauce. It's just gonna give it a little bit more of a salty taste and add a bit of color into the pork. The last thing that we're gonna add into our pot with the boiling water, pork, and all of the other herbs is some Sichuan peppercorns. Now this is a traditional dish from the Sichuan province, similar to when we made our latzaji. We wanna make sure we have those same fragrances and spices in the dish. So we're putting about a tablespoon of the peppercorns into the boiling water. Now we're not actually eating the peppercorns this time, so we're not going to have that tingly mouth feel as we're eating our twice cooked pork. We just want it in there to add a little bit of that flavor. So our pork is starting to boil back here. This only needs to boil for about 20 to 30 minutes. It just depends on how big of a piece of pork you have. For this small piece, we're just going to boil for 20 minutes today. You know that the pork is done if you can take a chopstick and kind of stick it all the way through. Okay, that's your test to make sure it's ready, it's cooked, and we can continue. Now while that's going, we're going to get our mise en place. So everything ready to go. So as soon as we can start doing our second method of cooking, which is our nice stir fry, everything is already ready to go for us. We won't have to stop, get anything else ready. So right now for our veggies, we're going to be using more of the Chinese leek. We have a few red chilies. Depending on how spicy you want this dish, you can cut around the seeds, but in this house we don't waste. So we're keeping our chilies intact, keeping the seeds in there to add a little bit more heat. And then some ginger and garlic. We're going to dice those up and then have our mise en place. is done boiling, I'm able to take my chopstick and stick it all the way through. That lets me know it's cooked and it's not overcooked. We do want to make sure it's still tender. And we're going to kick it a second time. So you'd rather have it just a little under than over. We don't want to dry out the pork. So we're going to take that out of the broth right now. It smells amazing in here. It's such a simple broth, but it really smells fantastic with the garlic, ginger, and the Chinese leek. Let's take out the pork, and then we can finish our mise en place. The pork is out of its broth. It's cooked perfectly. It's nice and juicy, still really tender. From that little bit where I took the chopstick and poked it through, we could see tons of juices rolling down the pork. So we know that it's cooked perfectly. Right now, we're going to let this rest. You want the pork to cool all the way down. That way later when we go to slice it up, it's a lot easier to get those nice, even cuts. So we're gonna put it to the side and finish up with our sauces that are gonna go into the stir fry. The two sauces that we're going to be using today when we stir fry the twice cooked pork is some chili bean paste and then some fermented soybeans. So if we take a look at the soybean here, these ones, when you open them up, they actually do already come whole. We only need about a tablespoon for today, but we don't want to have whole beans inside that stir fry. So instead what we're going to do is take what we need and chop that up nice and fine, just so we have a nice consistent texture within the stir fry and we don't have any large pieces of bean. The second thing we need is some chili bean paste or chili bean sauce. This is actually a really famous sauce and probably the easiest one to find. You can probably find it in your local grocery store. You might not have to venture all the way to an Asian supermarket. Although if you're looking for fermented soybeans in the Chinese leek, you probably want to take that trip to the Asian supermarket. Again, in this sauce, depending on which brand you get, it might be really nice and smooth, so finely minced already for you. Or if you notice there are some big pieces of beans, we're going to do the same thing we did with our soybean here. Just take out a scoop, give it a nice chop, have that consistent texture, just so everything has a good mouthfeel when we cook it all up in our stir fry. Okay, our pork belly has cooled down. It doesn't need to get all the way down to a chilled temperature, just room temperature is fine. We just want to make sure it's not steaming anymore, and we do want to let it rest. That way it does keep some of those juices in. If you go ahead and cut it right away, right after you've taken it out of that broth, then all of the juices are going to fall out and then it won't remain as tender as it could be. So we let it rest and we're going to take the time to carefully slice this. We want thin slices, about 2 to 3 millimeters thick. So we do really want some nice thin pieces, just that way everything stir fries evenly. Letting it rest really makes a huge difference. On the cutting board, it's still a little bit greasy, but that's only because we're using pork belly. It's like bacon, there's a lot of fat in there. But the pork itself is really juicy and still super tender, so definitely take the time to let it rest. This is where the magic happens. We finally get to assemble. The first thing we're gonna do is heat up our wok. So I'm gonna turn that on to about a medium high. We're gonna start to put in our pork belly. We wanna make sure we lay it nice and flat on the bottom of the wok, just so it gets nice and crispy all evenly. We don't want some pieces really crispy and some still really soft. So we're gonna put that nice and flat on the bottom of the wok. After a few minutes, about 1 to 2, then we're gonna flip it over and make sure we got the same thing on the other side. It's an even balance between letting the pork sit and get nice and crispy, but also keeping it moving so it doesn't burn. We're gonna put in just a little bit of oil to stop it from sticking. You don't need a lot because the pork belly, as it starts to cook down and render that fat, the fat itself will keep the pork from sticking. Ooh. Ooh. Okay. So we gotta evenly put it around the bottom so everything gets crispy. All right, so we leave that for just a little bit. I'm scared. Maybe too much oil. Is there too much oil? So right now, our twice cooked pork is looking good. It's nice and crispy, kind of towards the edges. Not every piece is totally crispy brown yet. We're not finished cooking. Right now, I've taken all the pork and kind of put it towards the perimeter. And in the center is all of the oil. Remember, I just added a little bit of peanut oil. The rest is from the twice cooked pork. We're gonna leave that in there and use that to actually cook up our ginger and garlic. So right now we're gonna put in all of our aromatics, ginger, garlic, our sauces as well. We're gonna cook those up and add a few other things first. Then the last two things to go in are the red peppers. We do want to cook those a little bit longer. And the Chinese leek. This gets cooked for the least amount of time because we do want to make sure that it still has a little bit of a bite to it, and we don't want to lose all of the flavor by cooking it all the way through. Are you ready? Here it is in all its glory. We have our spicy twice cooked pork. It looks fantastic. I'm really excited to dig in. And later on, we're gonna have some company over and it's their favorite dish. So I really hope that it goes well. So let's try it out. Now, when you serve this one, you're not gonna sit here and eat a whole plate by yourself. I mean, you could, but it's best served with a little bowl of white rice, only because that rice is gonna absorb a lot of that flavor and the juices that come out of the twice cooked pork and any of the leftover sauce. So let's dig in. Do you wanna try a piece, cameraman? Okay, come on here. Good? Nice. Good?
Yep.
Excellent. One thing that's really nice about this dish, because we cooked it two ways and we made sure that the pork was really well cooked through, but not too overcooked, is that the actual fatty bits of the pork belly just melt in your mouth. Because we've crisped it up, it's not hard to chew through, it's really soft and tender, so it's fantastic. I can't wait to dig in. We're gonna finish off our Asian feast for the rest of the night, and then we'll have a big old dinner. Maybe I'll put in some footage of that as well. If you like this, please give this video a thumbs up. I was really excited to make it. It was by request by one of the followers, and I look forward to seeing what you guys request that I make next. It can be anything at all, something new, something old, something you've made, something I have no idea what it is, but I'm excited to learn with you in my kitchen. So until next week, see you later guys. Bye.